Share. All right. So sharing here. So moving on to the middle strand in the bottom half of our reading rope, we have decoding, which is kind of lifting print off of the page is how I often hear it said. And then we also have, that goes hand in hand with it, encoding or spelling. So decoding is the process of translating print into speech by rapidly matching a letter or a combination of letter to their sounds. So matching the graphemes to the phonemes and then recognizing that those patterns make syllables and words. This is from readinghorizons.com. So now framing decoding and spelling as, or framing the spelling process, I should say, as spelling words with graphemes as opposed to letters can help students make sense of the seeming inconsistencies we see in English. So an example is we have the word height, H-E-I-G-H-T, and that's a lot of letters for just one height, you know, one syllable. And so if you can get them to the point where they recognize the E-I-G-H as one grapheme, pronounced as the long height, pronounced as a long I sound, that can help them just tackle that big block of letters in the middle without, you know, panicking a bit. So, there we go. Okay. So the alphabetic principle is something that undergirds our language. And so it sounds very obvious to us, but so words are made up of sounds that are represented by letters in more or less predictable manners. So the letters correspond to a sound consistently, and or letters correspond to sound and vice versa. So yeah. So students should be able to answer what sound does B make or C. So when you say the letter name, they should be able to give you the corresponding letter sound versus, you know, what letter makes the B sound. So the letter name is different than the sound the letter makes, which students should be able to answer and give you both either or. So just as an illustration, sometimes you'll have students that come from first languages that are not based on the alphabetic principle. Can anyone take a stab at how to pronounce these symbols, these squiggles? I see some people looking away and some people, yes, so good. So this is wall. This is the first person pronoun I, me, my in Chinese, and this is next to it we have tian, which just means money. They look pretty similar, right? So both boxes and with slashes through them, but they're pronounced very differently and they have very different meanings. So this is just an example of there's no sound to symbol correspondence in Chinese. So sometimes you'll have to really work to build that with your students. So I am putting my Chinese major to good use. So, all right. So an example from ABC English. What is this slide? Hold on. Bottom approach. Okay, maybe we'll tweak. Okay, we don't need that slide. So this is, okay, developing decoding habits. So again, when you see a letter, be able to say its sound. So this is from Really Great Reading. And you also may have your own routine in your own classroom if you're a language teacher. But so just remembering that consistency is key, and then the idea of multisensory approaches. So an example of teaching the short vowel sounds for ease of identification, and later down the road being able to work with them and manipulate the different vowel sounds in words and syllables as you see them. So the first one is apple, so the short A sound, and so you would have your students cup like an imaginary apple in front of them, so not just the motion but also the movement, so like ah. And so next you would have edge, and so you would have them run their hand over the edge of an imaginary desk or an imaginary folded piece of paper in front of them, so edge. And so you would so what this would look like in practice, I should say, is if you're looking at new vocabulary and you have a word like desk, you can say the word is desk. What vowel sound do you hear? And their response can look like so you see, I can't tell if you can see me moving, but I'm like doing this. So I don't know when my camera's pointed. So yes, helping you identify and manipulate the short vowels when you hear them. So the motion that goes with it is itch. So just pretend to itch your arm, don't actually dig into it. So nobody wants bleeding students. So especially now that we're out of a pandemic, or kind of. Anyways, short O, octopus, so you have the octopus swimming above your head. So that one's fun. Sorry, I'm afraid someone is behind me. All right. And then last one, short U, up. I would advise just looking up instead of pointing, just because in some cultures it is much more rude to point than others. So just erring on the side of cultural awareness, and yeah, so looking up instead of pointing, or if you do point, with more than one finger. So, and then for the long vowels, they just have the students trace the vowel as they say. So like A and then E, it's probably backwards for you. And then when you practice with the students, you can practice by holding up different vowel flashcards, and they'll give you the TPR response, and make sure you practice out of order. So it's probably best to practice with maybe sight words or something. So because if you just hold up a vowel in isolation, how do you know if it's supposed to be long or short? So example, teacher makes a vowel sound or says a word with an easily identifiable vowel sound. The students are to respond with the sound and hand motions. So just an example of how to use it, which I think I've gone over a couple times. Okay. So phonemic awareness skills. I'm trying to figure out where this is on the reading rope. So these are ideally to, where is this? Okay, I actually have better examples I want to share with you. And I'm going to do the phonemic awareness skills. You saw the pyramid in order of, so the bottom is the easiest skills, simplest, and then more complex skills are up top. So I have a handy cheat sheet. So the first one is, and you also have a list of these in your handout. It looks like, or some of you have, and then I'll email it to you because I had to make a separate handout when I realized it didn't have everything. So phonemic awareness skills. So the first and most basic skill to learn to manipulate phonemes and become proficient in this is phoneme isolation. So what this looks like is, say you have the word, I'm hoping the glare isn't too bad. We'll just use the word dog because we like dogs. We also like cats, for those cat people that I know you're out there. So you would ask your student, what is the first sound in dog? And then hopefully they'll tell you the letter sound, duh, because you're asking for the sound, not necessarily, you didn't ask them what is the letter, right? So, but you could also ask that. So just being able to ask both ways and get both answers, building that awareness again. And then also, asking what is the last sound. And then also important is the middle sound, because middle sounds get more complex. You can ask, and you can also ask them, how do you write it? So whether they have their own small whiteboards or following along on a pen and paper or tablet, etc. So, and then with the middle, as the middle sound is a vowel, you can also use those hand symbols that we just used. So like, what vowel sound do you hear? And like, give me your, I don't know, TPR response. You'd have a word for it maybe. So one thing that we specifically encounter in ESL a lot is trouble with this sound. And so I'm seeing some nods, yes. So what isolating can help with is, a lot of times students don't have trouble making this sound in the middle of a word, like brother. So if they know this word, you can have them. Can you read this word for me? Good. And then take away sounds little by little. You could do BR and BR until you are left with, other. You should know this word, other. And then I would take away the N sound probably. So, and then take away the O finally, and then just have them pronounce it as you take away sounds more and more. So the idea is that they're practicing pronouncing this sound and hearing the sound more and more. So this is an example of isolation, but also compounded deletion, which is kind of down the road. So isolation. Next we have blending. So this is kind of what it sounds like. It's just taking two graphemes, two letters, and smushing them together. So with my student, we like to do the flashcards. So I just have a flashcard letter set, and I'm sure you can see what I'm doing. So you can lay out the cards and have them read it out to you. And then we also saw this with the syllables, that we blended together with volunteer. So blending is just putting phonemes or in graphemes together. So, and you'll want to, again, give them sound cues and letter cues, so what happens if I put a P sound in front of am, what does it become? Or what happens if I put the letter P? So they should still give you the same answer. And then also seeing if they can write that answer. So next is segmentation. So phoneme segmentation, again, we're moving up that pyramid. That is what we did with the finger stretching. So like cat, at, and then you repeat the word cat. You can also ask them, what vowels do you hear? And honestly, if you just look up, phoneme segmentation activities, there's a ton of much more fun stuff out there. So, and then moving on to the upper half of the pyramid, we have phoneme addition. So, which is again what it sounds like, and having manipulatives, so like bananagrams, tiles, or even just writing, again, can help. It depends on how high tech you want to be. Just holding up different letters to the beginning of a word or replacing the middle letter. So I have bam, but I could, let's see, in the middle, nonsense syllable, bim. So just switching out the letters, having your student read it, having them choose a letter and telling you, etc. And then deletion is, again, what it sounds like. And then substitution is considered the most complex skill. And if they are proficient in substitution, they should also be proficient in, all the subsequent skills. And yes, sometimes it is. So one thing I did with my students with these flashcards with addition and substitution is just writing. Oh, what did we do? We did ask, and that was a bad choice because it's hard to pronounce sometimes. So we would have a verb and we would just hold up different endings because she had trouble reading the endings consistently. So like, what does this verb mean? And can you read this for me? So this is where it got tricky with the asks, like it's just like a hissing. So, and then also just having these available for students is good to help them physically understand how letters and sounds move around in words. So sharing the screen. Okay, so this is the pyramid we just went through with some examples. And if it will let me click. All right, so here's the phonemic awareness skills again. And I will say that they spelled substituting wrong and it was not me, but it is cited on the slide after the fact. So if you want to tell Sarah slides 106 or something that she spelled something wrong. Actually don't, that's mean. Okay, activities provided in phonics kits. Also, again, with minimal pairs, these are great with substitution and adding and everything. So again, to help build listening discrimination. So So the goal is to build phonemic proficiency where students can easily manipulate the given words and phonemes in any of these manners, whether or not they be words with meaning or just nonsense. So, click. All right, so last one, you guys are doing great. Sight recognition. So this is the last strand on the bottom half of our reading rope. So again, your handout has a list of various sight words. They're all organized by various syllable and vowel types. So I had a lot of fun putting that together. Now you want not just word recognition, but also comprehension. So, and then just a little blurb to think about of how recognition and comprehension are related, because you can definitely have one without the other. Usually it is, well, I guess in writing, it would be recognition without comprehension, but in listening, it would more than likely be the other way around if they're not able to form the written form in their head and write it down. Anyways, and then you also want to have literacy level comprehension checks. So again, if you have that really strong language barrier, they might not know that you're asking, do you understand? You might just get the deer in the headlights look, or they might not be, so just building that routine. You could just use red and green cards, or nods are usually okay, but also just being aware of sometimes they don't want to let the teacher know. And I'm sure you teachers also know this is not just for ESL students, it's hard to ask for help sometimes. So just being aware of that. And then all the layers of culture that could also pile on top of that. So, and then I had just been talking with a volunteer the other day about target sight word achievement in our public schools. So just to get a gauge of like where our ESL students may or may not be. So kindergarten, it is recommended that they end kindergarten with about 20 sight words. This is from a couple different sites. And then first grade is 100, second grade is 200 after that. And then the idea is beyond third grade, they're able to manipulate the phonemes and understand words well enough to sound them out and teach themselves the words after that point. So whether or not they learn them to the point of being sight words is more up to them. So up to the learner. So excuse me while I grab a drink. So automatic and effortless. These are two concepts that we want to have if we are to have reading comprehension. So now that you've had time to look at these pictures, think about driving a very routine route to work. Your mind has time to wander. You might be able to, plan meals for the next week, or think about, like that was a loophole in that TV show the other day. Like how did, versus if you have conditions like on the right, the terrible weather, other bad drivers, because all other drivers are bad, of course. You really don't have mental space to think. Sometimes I even, turn the radio down so I can see better. So the idea that this gets at is reading fluency is like putting words together in my head, because I've been saying a lot of words. So when students are able to read fluently with comprehension, it's like the driving on a clear day, and they don't have to worry about figuring out what that vowel team means or get hung up on this form that they don't recognize, a verb ending they hadn't seen before, versus when they are struggling with certain letter sounds, letter combinations, punctuation, all this unfamiliar such, they don't have any room in their heads for comprehension. So yes, it's a nice metaphor. I probably could have said it better, but I think you get the idea. All right, good. I see some nods. All right, so were you successful? Did you read it? Private sign, do not read. So this is getting at the automaticity of reading, and it's really hard to not read it when you're there, when you have the automaticity. So we want our students to be at that point. And then lastly, this is just an activity. So I will ask you to unmute if you are able, and we'll just, so a lot of you have probably seen this with the reading the colors and not the, it's going, hold on, it's automatic on a timer. So you're to say the animal and not the word in print, and you'll have a little over 1 second to say it, and I will be saying it with you. And this is just to further illustrate the principle of automaticity in reading and the power of like the sight words. So, and just verbally tell me that you're ready if you are ready. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Okay. Okay.
Penguin.
Penguin. Horse.
Bear.
Rhinoceros.
Goose.
Snake.
Snake. Cat.
Yeah, so how did that go? How was that? Was that rough? I feel stressed
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. So fun fact, this is my kitten. So yeah, she's like more than 4 pounds now. She was talking to my mom specifically because she saw her when she was a baby. Anyways, yeah, so illustrate the power of automaticity and sight recognition of words. So good. So that is sight recognition, and I guess it feels slightly abrupt, but for closing thoughts, one, it is difficult when there is a solid language barrier, but try to get the students as involved and engaged as much as possible, whether that be TPR or singing, dancing. It's different over Zoom, of course. You'll have to use your imaginations. And then it also is normal to feel stuck or like you're failing or not making any progress when you've been going over, 6 letters of the alphabet for 3 weeks. But just it's normal and it's difficult, but don't lose heart. I feel like that's a really bad note to end on, of like, it's normal to feel stuck, but it is. So, okay, so that is most of what I have for you. I am happy to field any other questions or go over anything else in the handout. Or anything. Otherwise, you are free to hop off. And I will stop the recording, actually.